Hello everyone. Today we've got a story to tell. I'm pleased to show, let us talk about what this is going to be about. This is going to be about water. This is going to be about farming. This is going to be about regenerative agriculture with regenerative water and the effects, the power of that water plays, the role that water plays in the quality of everything that occurs. What we're going to do is, I had the opportunity to meet a farmer, a customer of Jim Bracken's, the director of Creative Ag Products, who makes Pacific Grow oceanic hydrolysate. This is one of his customers, and they grow some amazing foods. They grow amazing crops. However, there is a catch. The crops weren't so amazing, some of them. And that's when we came along. So what I'm going to do, without giving away all the story here, is to introduce Jim, who will introduce our guest, Delores Beyersdorf, and from there we will talk directly to her as she'll share some of her experiences when we put Vortex generators on her farm.
Hello, this is Jim Bracken's Uncle Jimmy with Uncle Jimmy's Garden Group, and I every time get a chance to talk to some of my customers. I love it. And this is my oldest and maybe my best customer, because she's been doing business with us probably 13 of the 17, 18 years we've been in business. And her name is Delores Beyersdorf. And she's been graciously sharing her master gardenership, and beyond that, maybe it's a doctorate gardenership, but has used our product for all these years. And I just want to let everybody know that she is basically one of my gurus in the gardening group.
So over the course of that day, we had an opportunity to get acquainted with Delores and John's situation. The season was well underway, and they had already noticed a difference in the quality of their crops between the acreage that was covered by the Yakima River versus that which was covered by the well. And this became a perfect opportunity to see to what extent would vortexing, let's say, mitigate, affect, what kind of change might occur. Is the season gone? Is what they are experiencing or were experiencing the best that they could actually anticipate? She said, she expressed to me, first of all, the cattle's water, and I'm not sure if that came from the well or from the Yakima River, was always murky. It was always cloudy. The composting was always, she knew what it should be doing. It was slower. It was difficult for the composting process to actually occur. Turns out that the ground was hard, compacted. There are a number of different things that were going on. So plenty of places to see whether there would be a change, what kind of change there would be. So the decision was made to install a 4-inch unit for the farm to handle the Yakima River water, and she also made the decision to put one on their home. That one also produced some, don't let me talk, don't let me preview things. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Now,
You want to cover this up?
we've got some actual results. Here goes. So let's talk about a little bit about, first of all, what do you grow, and because we know you're natural as well. So
right.
Let's just start there.
So we grow a little of everything: fruit trees, grapes, berries, 2 greenhouses, so a little of everything. And then, of course, we have the pasture where we have the cows. And the alfalfa is underneath that program, but we want to get, the movable one on that. But we did put the fertilizers on with the Vortex water. And we did see an improvement in that alfalfa right away. So we did the Vortex water with the fish and the calcium and boron. So I'm just seeing such a difference in the weed pressure, because this year was horrible. The watergrass coming out of the river, we are one of the first right here, so everything goes uphill from us. So what do we get? All the weed seeds. Everything that comes out of that river is right here. And this year was horrible. It was just unbelievable, the growth of especially the watergrass and the inability to dig them out. They're just solid. And within 2 days of changing the water, the texture of the soil was softer, and you could just gently pull out those roots. That was amazing. And the weeds that regrew after that seemed very, very weak and wimpy. So there was a total change. The strawberry bed, I kept fighting calcium issues and with the brown edges around the leaves, and now they're perfect. So we're assimilating that calcium and getting those berries healthy. I mean, the berries were still good, but I just fighting that brown on the edge of the leaves. Now they're perfect. They are healthy, they're standing up, they're green, they're glossy, amazing. And after we did the pasture, probably a week or so, I looked out there and I thought, man, it looks so even. You just didn't see any brown areas or anything that looked off. It just looked manicured. And that's quite interesting, because you've got more cows than we should have out there. And some days, some areas don't look as good as they could. We've used less water. We are seeing good production. The bean plants that were outside were getting damage on the leaves. We had brown leaves on these plants and couldn't figure out. I had a suspicion it was the water, that there was something in there that was damaging the leaves. And within days of putting the Vortex machine on the irrigation water, we had fresh green leaves and the plants were growing vigorously.
Oh my goodness.
So we just see little things happening in different places. Soil texture is softening up so that you can actually, get things going in and out like they should be. And I just, you just see everything healthier.
Yeah, and it's interesting how progressive it is. I know when we first came out, the murkiness of the troughs.
Oh, they were disgusting.
Yeah.
In 2 hours, there was so much algae, and it looked like sewer water. It's brown, and it just had all this stuff in it. And using the Vortex water, I took a picture of the first day that we did it. We had to scrub the tanks really well to get the stuff out of the pores of the plastic. And I took a picture the first day. I took a picture on the 5th day, and you could tell no difference. In fact, the picture looks kind of weird because it looks exactly the same. And 2 weeks later, it was exactly the same. There was no growth of algae or anything of this sort.
Okay.
So the tanks, the water tanks for all the animals are in good shape, and it stays nice, crystal clear. It looks really good. You're not scrubbing tanks every day and Cloroxing everything and spending a lot of time trying to get the algae off of it.
I know.
And the smell, oh my goodness. Smell like sewer water all the time. You go past tank and go, ugh,
Now, I hadn't noticed that when I was here, so that was part of the experience before that.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like, what are you supposed to do for 8 acres?
Yeah.
So this took care of the problem. And the plants and animals are going to be healthier as time goes on because of having clean water. I'm just excited as all get up for next year.
Yeah, and that was a thing too, because we got here after the season had started. So you had already seen some degradation
Yes.
in the quality, in spite of using
Everything
all
that I
natural.
do.
Yeah,
Yes.
all the things you do.
Well, this was the thing that I do my soil tests, I do beneficial microbes, I do all these things. Why am I getting this black, scummy stuff on the top of the soil in the greenhouse? I knew that there was an issue. It just like I hadn't done anything. And you go in and rototill and you have this gumminess that I should not have. And I knew from times previous that when the irrigation water went off and we went back to house water that it improved. So I knew it was the irrigation water. But when you have an 8-acre farm, it's not like you can run house water on all of it. And of course that puts pressure on our well too. But this took care of it in about 36 to 48 hours. We saw the difference and things started turning around. So now areas that were heavily compacted before, I've gone out and tilled with the tractor and the soil is fine granules and looking very, very nice. So I'm so excited for next spring because I love growing potatoes. I grow 6 varieties and they do well in good soil.
It's telling us, first of all, that natural inputs and unnatural water don't get you natural results. Okay,
No.
optimal results. So let's put it like-
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is, well, also you think about your septic tank. When you have contaminated water going into your septic tank, you're not getting the microbial breakdown in the septic tank that you want to have.
Right.
And there's just so many issues on so many levels when the water has contaminants that you don't even think about. To say nothing of things like filters and hot water heaters and your clothes. Getting your clothes white again without 10 tons of bleach is fantastic because I don't like to use a lot of bleach. I use very, very little. And seeing things cleaner, whiter, softer.
Yeah, you were talking about a towel that had been stiff for quite some time, and now all of a sudden,
It's soft.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a large washcloth and it was really thick and heavy. And for whatever reason, I don't know if John had oil, some kind of oils on his hands when he used it, but it was just nasty. And I soaked it in Clorox water all day. I used hydrogen peroxide, and I couldn't get the dinginess out of it to, where I thought it was looking nice. And the stiffness, I'm going, how can you wash and dry it and it's stiff? And it took a few washings, probably washed it, 3 times, and finally it's soft and white. And so there was something in there that, the detergents weren't breaking down, the regular water wasn't breaking down, and now it is. So it's going to get better as time goes on. Your toilets look cleaner. Only takes a second to, wash down a toilet. There's just so many. One person said, don't have the water spots on my faucets in the kitchen. All kinds of little things that you never think about that are an improvement and showing that the water does work.
All right. Now, this is the other thing. You put one on your house too,
Yes.
and within a few days you had an event.
Well, I was totally horrified when it started working because the animal tanks were disgusting. And I never thought about a buildup on PVC pipe because we had heavy wall PVC pipe. You really don't think that it has a buildup like metal. And
Out of sight, kind of out of mind.
oh my goodness, these tanks were awful. I was scrubbing them every day. But on the 3rd day, I went out and the water was so pristine and so clear that it actually sparkled. And then I realized we have probably a couple thousand feet of underground pipes, for the irrigation, all the animals, all the tanks that are on the farm. There's quite a long run. We have, I don't know, a dozen frost-free faucets around the farm. We have them in the greenhouse. We, everywhere. So that's all house water. So you just don't think about how many feet that you have to clean out when it starts cleaning out. But by the third day, everything was beautiful. So that was a real eye-opener, that we were eating, drinking, and bathing in yucky-looking water. So you can understand why you get a dinginess to your clothes, because you're really not having really clean water.
A persistent dinginess, so to speak.
Yes.
You know, and then it'll be normal to try to use the chemicals and everything else to get rid of it, but the unseen gook in the pipes are continuing to influence all of that.
How can you get it clean if you're using dirty water
Yeah.
and you're just putting back on the clothes the same thing that you were trying to wash out?
And essentially the water that's actually making it through the pipes is going through and around that gunk in order to do so.
Right.
So to have the water itself be energized, ionized, in whatever form you want to say, enough to now actually pick all that stuff up, dissipate it all, and actually clear the pipes is just a fundamental thing that it does. It's great.
No, it's been fun to see all the different changes. And as time goes on, I'm sure that we're going to see other things happen.
Sure.
Just the laundry is a big thing, that every time you're washing your clothes, they're getting better and not wearing out, because all these things that are in the pipes, of course, are affecting the fibers in your clothes. And, you know, people talk about gym clothes never getting the smell out of them. I don't have that issue here, but I can suspect that you're going to get rid of that gym smell a whole lot better than you do with town water, with the chlorine and everything else that they've got in there, because people in town were talking about it and they're going, I can't get rid of the stink. So it's going to make a big difference.
Now, the one thing we got it right into conversation, but to talk about the fundamental differences from your water sources, you have a well and you have the water from the Yakima River, and this is a very large farming area, region, and secondly, much of the farming is conventional.
Yes.
Meaning chemical-based, inorganic-based materials, which most often, in fact, customarily run off from those farms and go into the river, and that becomes...
Absolutely.
So essentially, that's why your natural inputs that you're using, your fish, your sea crops, and other things that you're using, is still being fed, being fed by this chemically influenced and contained water source from the Yakima River.
Right. And we know in years past that there have been sewage problems upstream from us where things have failed. And this happens from time to time. They don't always notify you that. So you're dealing with some raw sewage also. So this way you have control of your water source by cleaning it up. Because the Yakima can be very, very nasty. They don't recommend you eat fish out of it. They don't recommend you swim out of it.
Yeah, you don't want you to get in it, right?
Okay. They said, well, maybe you could eat 2 or 3 fish a year out of the Yakima. So, and we're, you know, at the low stage of it. You have to think about how far upstream that river comes, how many towns it comes through, how much contamination it can pick up. And it runs along the freeway for many, many miles there coming out of Yakima. It's right there on the side of the road. So you have pollutants from the cars and things going by, spraying of the weeds on the sides of the road. They spray for mosquitoes on the Yakima. So there's a tremendous amount of contaminants. And we can sanitize all this, get rid of all this. That's huge.
Yeah. A week or so ago, I was in Michigan, and I sat by the Flint River, which has become famous for other reasons, or infamous, you might say.
Infamous, yes.
And yet the issues that people in Flint are dealing with are not that different from here in the Yakima Valley. When you really get down to it, the names of the materials may be different, but the overall effects are the same. And I said in my video there, just doing my commentary, I'm sitting there on the campus of a esteemed college or university of higher learning, and I said, one regard, how good and what use are these schools of higher learning if they're not teaching us how to heal and these rivers, how to change these things. Okay, we as a society have the knowledge and have the ability to not cause these problems, and not perpetuate these problems.
Right.
We do have it. The issue now is using it, and as it turns out, water's proclivity to maintain an imprint of any and everything that's been put into it until certain circumstances come about to release it is part of our problem. One thing we saw when you install the 4-inch unit, we saw this pink film on the inside of the pipe,
Yes.
and of course you saw a lot of stuff, in the tanks. But one of the things that we're seeing is that knowing that a vortex event or a vortex phenomena erases essentially the impression, the imprints of the water, of where the water has been. It clears it, just in the same way that you can clear a flash memory or a hard drive. And it gives you, this is a phenomena that does that. It's not something we can do otherwise. But it gives you an ability and gives the water ability to now take on and do new things, which you are seeing happen now every day.
Absolutely. That red film, I don't know whether that's a bacteria or a fungus, because they have the red tide over there on the ocean. But when you see that color, it's usually not good. So it's and this is what you get out of contaminated water. So making sure we don't have that is a big item. It's going to be so much more beneficial for our animals. I notice with the milk that the milk is lasting longer in the refrigerator. So you keep seeing little things where everything is getting a little bit better. And it's been a relatively short time.
Yes, yeah.
Month, 6 weeks at the most here. And so it's going to be really fun to see a year from now the kind of things that we're going to see. Having the greenhouses and being able to start things early, seeing how the plants react with getting really healthy water, having more frost resistance, and just getting the benefits of the things I have been doing already, like the beneficial microbes and the things of this sort, instead of killing them all off because of the contaminants, because that's what's been happening. It's like a waste of money for me to do that because it's killing it off as fast as I use them.
I think the other thing for anyone, and what makes so much of this importance, all the things that you do for your soil and for your plants, is so that your crops, whatever it is that you're growing, actually has nutrients that can be given to, whether it's a plant, whether it's a person or an animal that's consuming it, that they actually are nourishing.
And the root system, because we know when we have contaminants in the soil that your root system is really limited. You don't have all those fine hairs absorbing the nutrients because you have that burning of the roots. And you can look at those and you kind of have white chunks rather than nice fine little root systems. And I believe that that's a big factor in some of these plants too, where you're just not getting the extensive root system you need to produce well.
Yeah, when I was in Indianapolis, the greenhouse grower pulled out some pansies that was in a pot, but he pulled it out to show me the roots and just how rich and thick and everything, just full of roots, And so yeah.
And especially with hydroponics, I've seen some absolutely gross roots in hydroponics because their water supply and they're over fertilizing, and instead of having these fine root systems, they have something about the size of your finger that's white and ugly. It is not absorbing nutrients. They've fried it. And so if you could have a healthy root system where it's picking up the nutrients you have, then you're going to have a healthy plant. But if you've got toxins that are burning off the root hairs, then you're never going to get the production that you want.
Wow. We're talking with Delores Beyersdorf, Benton City, Washington, who has had 2 water sources, one from the Yakima River, one from her well on her farm, to different outcomes of quality of output, but improvements in putting 2 units on, one on the farm and one on the home. We've seen improvements actually from both water sources.
After I saw what happened on the farm, there was no way we weren't going to put it on the house. You were not leaving the property without that water machine being installed.
Yeah, I know you said all of a sudden said, I want the water. I want it for the house. Okay, all right.
No, that was such a huge improvement that I knew we needed to do it on the house water. And I didn't know, I had no clue that there was that much junk running in the house water, because our well has always been pretty good.
Sure.
But I have noticed, it just seems like we've had deterioration the last few years, the last 2 or 3 years of the water quality in our well. And of course, you figure out how many farms are putting contaminants on the soil, which is going into our groundwater. We don't have complete control of our groundwater. So as time goes on, it's filtering down into that water system. So it was amazing. It's been a fantastic thing to see how pure the water can be.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for taking the leap, because this is going to be a progressive journey. There's going to be more things to discover. As we were talking earlier, and I said, there are no experts in this area. I'm certainly not one. We just have had more experience than the average individual. And we've had enough experience to see this is a major natural asset that we as a collective, as a society, are generally not aware of and certainly not using. And I see this as a way that we can give nature the last word for a multitude of, you could say, sins that we are doing to ourselves, knowingly or unknowingly. We don't have to pay the price of our prior ignorance, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So with this, I know we could talk for a long time, but this is just beautiful. I appreciate it, and we look forward to much more growth and much more learning and sharing what we've learned, because this is how we help other people to see, to be willing to put their foot or put their toes in the water themselves.
Absolutely. When you see what improvements we have for next spring.
Absolutely. Delores, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, what are our takeaways from this experience? First of all, and just to recap, we have a farmer that is using all natural inputs on their farm with 2 sources of water. One from the river, Yakima River, one from their well. Different quality of output from both sources. The well water sourced was much better than from the river. Farming in that region is mostly conventional, meaning highly chemicalized. So degradation in quality, in spite of having natural inputs, no chemicals whatsoever. No chemicals, if the farmer is not putting chemicals on, but the water has it in it, then you got chemicals on your farm. That is what Delores and John were experiencing prior to putting on a Vortex generator from President Water on the farm to handle the river water, but also on the house, which handled the well water. It turned out that adding Vortex generators on those lines improved both sources. The river water, which had this pink film on the inside of the pipe, became a totally different substance. The murkiness in their troughs where their cows drink clarified, totally clear. The composting operation, which was always real. It was frustrating because it was never happening. Why? The water was really inhibiting microbial activity. It normalized after putting the vortex generator on the line. What is this telling us? I mean, what is actual experience telling us that scientists would probably say is impossible? It's telling us that a vortexing, an effective vortex generator put on a water line will literally mitigate the ill effects of the chemicals that are still in that water. Because what our chemicals are simply what chemicals are assemblages of molecules and compounds and elements. They are elements that have been put together in a certain way. And what experience is telling us, what the evidence is suggesting here, real clearly, is that the vortex phenomenon, which is an act of nature, put in a place to interact with the water, it's a natural phenomenon. But what it is indicating is that the forces that are brought to bear in that vortex event can, in fact, disassemble, strip electrons, change the chemical nature and the behavior of that water source. Water that's murky exposed to a vortex event becomes clear. The elements, even the behavior of the water, becomes very, very different. Evaporation rates change. Surface tension changes. Permeability drastically changes. Delores indicated that she started seeing an evening out over her crops where there had been uneven distribution and dispersion, uneven infiltration of the water into the soils. The compacted soils that had these big weeds on them that were hard to get out, all of a sudden became, in a very short period of time, became permeable. And the weeds, and why would the weeds now become wimpy? Because there's more oxygen available now. There's more activity happening in there. And so that actually impacted the weeds too, or what were called weeds. They're just plants that still grew in the environment that it was in. When you have compacted soil, you're going to have less available oxygen, for example, and other minerals. When you now get all of that compaction mitigated, it's a different environment down there. You get different results. So this is what is exciting about putting a vortex generator on, because so many people are thinking there's nothing we can do. And maybe in one regard, we can't do it. It is the vortex. And you could say it's a vortex effectively created, if you will, effectively facilitated, in this case, by President Water. Anyway, for more information and to discuss how adding a vortex generators to your water lines for your application can help you, give us a call, a toll-free number, or visit us at presidentwater.com. Oh yeah, toll-free number, 888-777-6045. Anyway, thanks a lot. Take care. Peace.